How can I record a video podcast on my Galaxy S10? I think it makes the most sense that I have a workflow which also works out in the wild. So if I meet someone on the street, then I can have a video podcast. So what would this podcast setup be? I just either am holding my phone or I have a tripod with me. So currently I have a GorillaPod 5K, I think it is called. And then on top of it, I have a mount, which is the Ulanzi ST3, which I got from Amazon, and it cost, I think, 15, 20 euros or something like this. Now, compared to a few other mounts, it does not have a tilt mode, which is kind of unfortunate, but since I do have a ball head on this here, this kind of alleviates the problem at least a little bit. So what I then can do is prop this up in front of me, but of course now this is a lot to carry. So I figured maybe I could have a smaller tripod, or I just hold it with my hand. But then what about the audio? So what you're currently listening to is the internal microphone of the Galaxy S10, which is fine if I speak directly to the camera and I speak as loud as I do currently. But I think it is less useful if I then am here, let's say I record a podcast in studio and I'm here and then I'm talking to a guest, which is maybe here. And also there's maybe a little bit of more distance in between us two. Why? Because, well, social distancing, not social distancing in terms of COVID, but social distancing in terms of not being that close to each other. So now microphone solutions. I think the king solution, the best solution would be to get the Rode wireless, no, not Rode. So the Rode also has a wireless microphone and also the Go 2, but I think the current best solution, if I would have money to splurge on it, would be to buy the DJI Mic Go, I think it is also called. I think it is called the Go. So these are small microphones. I have a receiver which I could plug into my Galaxy S10, and then we could both have microphones which are both wireless. So of course one could also do lavaliers, but then one is kind of tethered to the phone, and also maybe one needs extension cords, and then what if it breaks? What if one tears? Then one tears possibly the connection port here, which then in the long term probably not results in the most stable audio. Now, current solutions that I have the Rode VideoMic Go 2, but this is a directional mic, so it works best for one source of audio, which is usually a mouth. And so it's kind of, well, it takes all of the possible audio sources in a sphere, and then it directs it basically directly at one. So I'm currently also not using this, mostly because it's kind of unreliable, and usually if I record videos like this, I don't record them in my camera app, which I'm currently doing because I wanted to preview the podcast setup. But what I'm usually doing is I record directly within the Shorts app, which is, I guess, also fine in terms of making already a better video, because it allows me to do multiple takes, whereas here I can only pause in between, and then if I make a mistake, I cannot redo the last take, which is quite useful, I think. Now, there is also another option, which is to use the Zoom H6. I think this is kind of the best solution I currently have, but there is a major downside, which is that I cannot really monitor the audio. So I have my Zoom H6 down here, which you can see if I take my phone out and show it to you. So this is a Zoom H6. I got a black version. I previously had actually another version, which now my grandpa has, because I wanted him to record a few songs he wrote over the last couple of years. So I kind of gifted it to him, but not really, because I actually sold a few pieces of gear he wanted to sell. And so now I click on audio, and then I click on stereo mix and PC Mac. So now what I have here is a setup which then outputs this here, which is so this is basically TRS. This is a normal 3.5 millimeter headphone jack, and then I need a TRS to TRRS adapter, which is the one with the 3 rings here, and this one then goes into my phone, and then I can record the audio not via the USB-C, but via the headphone jack, which I think is quite useful. Why? Because then I can charge my phone while I record audio. Wouldn't it be very useful if phones had something like a headphone jack, where you can either use a microphone to then record audio, or maybe even call someone on a phone? Imagine this, calling someone with a headset on a phone, not using your USB-C, because then you cannot charge your phone at the same time, which is quite a terrible invention, I guess. So now you might wonder, what does this sound like? And for this purpose, I now am plugging in the Zoom H6, which now it does not show as audio source already, but now it does. So it showed recording through headset or something like this within the Samsung camera app. And so now what I can do is a couple of things. First of all, this is also something that I wanted to show you. So basically I can reduce the blur. If you take a look at the background, now it is less blurry. Now should be a little bit more blurry. There are also other options which make it even more blurry. So if I'm in an environment where I want to blur the background even more, then what I can potentially do is blur the background even more. But this seems to take out more of the battery because it's all the time processing the video, which then, at least in the past, meant that in summer in Berlin, when I also tried to record videos like this, or when I drove somewhere and then I recorded a video in the car, meant that my phones usually overheated after like 20 minutes because also the sun was shining through the front window, and then the phones overheated eventually because I also needed to charge them because, well, batteries aren't that good. So now what you're listening to is the Zoom H6, but it is not directed at me. But what I now will do, fortunately for you, is to direct it at me. So this is now if I have it just standing basically here, and then I'm recording it. So the capsule on the Zoom H6 is actually a capsule that's, I think, quite good in terms of what it sounds like. So we have here the XY capsule. It also comes with a different capsule that is more omnidirectional, kind of also spheric. So there are different patterns of picking up these microphones have. And so now what I'm using is this here. It also has a knob, which I usually have turned up to 8 or 9. Even if I'm closer to the mic, it also seems at least to have worked in the past. And I also can turn off the different audio sources. So potentially I could also record with other microphones as well. I could even have like two of these professional microphones. I don't know what these are called. Roadcasters or something like this. Or PSA-1 or something like this. I think these professional microphones are called, which are used in most podcasts. But there is a big downside to these microphones. I mean, who in real life sits down and talks to a microphone like this? And you need to have a close proximity to the microphone such that it picks up the sound. I mean, if you have ever listened to Andrew Huberman on his podcast or looked at him, it's like ridiculous because he bends down, and I think it makes sense also in a podcast to record human conversation and also communication as natural as possible. And so I think wireless mics are kind of the thing to go. Also, if you take a look at TV shows like in 2005, what do they have? They have wireless microphones. So they have a wireless lavalier mic, and then it goes to a transmitter, and then they receive it in the cameras somewhere. And then we have podcasts, which then kind of makes this very awkward move to then speak into the microphone all the time. So now again, I'm directing it directly at me. And so because I have it down here, kind of in front of my screen, I can also use it, at least in theory, because of course I need to turn it on all the time. There is no automatic turn on, which is unfortunate. I could potentially also use it in Zoom calls. I also tried recording with OBS Studio a couple of times, and also I tried at least recording kind of podcast, or I tried a podcast setup using OBS Studio, and maybe one could even record two phones. So I did previously try two phones. So I have two Galaxy S10s, and then I had them basically directed at different angles, and then. So basically, if there are two people, then one can have one person here, one person here, and then one can have two Galaxy S10s directed at the people, and one can basically live edit the video in OBS Studio. But then also, what about the audio? One could again use the Zoom H6, which I did in many videos in the past. But the Zoom H6 I found harder to connect to my desktop compared to the Rode VideoMicro 2, which I, for the most videos, which I recorded with OBS Studio in the last couple of years, used.